I'm Bobbi Fischer, and this is my Aesthetically Awkward podcast, a show where we dive into all things aesthetics, health, wellness, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice. Please consult your own healthcare provider before making any decisions in your personal health journey. Now let's get into it. Welcome back to the Aesthetically Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Bobbi, and today I am joined by a guest who I'm really excited to introduce you to. Her name's Monica Allen. She's a nurse practitioner here in Danville, Illinois. She owns Allen Mind, Body, and Spirit Health. She's the author of Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and she also hosts Allen Money Talks over on YouTube.
Thanks, Bobbi. And I basically do counseling out of my office here in Danville. Some of that counseling, whether it be for anxiety, depression, or money, which is my passion, we deal with a lot of the thinking around money, around anxiety, around depression, or just around your overall mental health.
Absolutely. I know finances have been a pain point at multiple points within my life, dating back into my teenage years when my parents struggled financially. I know my father had to take a long time off of work because he had a hip replacement. And that's when I was kind of forced to either go work so I could afford things like my basketball shoes so I could participate in extracurriculars. Your mental health is definitely directly tied to where you are financially in life. So I love that you're bringing those services to everybody within Danville. And then you also see people virtually as well. It's not just in person, brick and mortar, but you have virtual appointments.
Yes, through Indiana and Illinois where I'm licensed. I see people out of Chicago, Springfield, Indianapolis. So at first I wondered if that was going to be a good fit, but for the psychiatric, the mental health issues, it is a good fit. A lot of that is talking. I send a lot of emails after the visit of what I want them to do between our visits and can prescribe medications if needed in both of those states. Although I always preface it with medications are maybe 25 to 40% of the help, and the real help comes from what you put into it and the effort you put into getting better.
I tell people that home care regimens are about 80% in comparison with what we do in the office, like our in-office procedures and counseling, that's about 20%. So everything that you're doing outside your lifestyle, your home care regimens, whether it's skincare, whether it's fitness, your hydration status, your nutrition, that is always going to be 80% of your overall outcome and result. So I love that theory kind of applies in different aspects of healthcare. So let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about your background, what led you into nursing and eventually becoming a mental health nurse practitioner, because that's a specialty that a lot of our listeners might not really know much about.
That is I loved nursing, and I did it at a young age because my dad, he died of a heart attack at age 44. When I went up there, he was in the hospital. He didn't die immediately, off and on for a year. And I met those ICU nurses. I loved them. They were so energetic and just full of life and busy and smart. I didn't end up being an ICU nurse, but I went onto a psychiatry ward in Terre Haute, Indiana, regional hospital. And then one thing led to another. And within a year or two, I was back in. Just God opened doors for me. And I was in getting a psychiatric prepared master's degree full-time.
Okay.
And I didn't really know all the doors that was going to open, but it opened a lot of doors. When I started to work at the VA a few years in, they decided they wanted medical nurse practitioners. And so they sent me back to get the medical.
Okay. So you were actually a mental health nurse practitioner first, and then you went back to get that second credential for your family nurse practitioner later.
Yes.
That I didn't realize. For some reason, I thought you were an FNP and primary care background first and then went back to get the psychiatric credentials, not the traditional tracks.
They called it clinical nurse specialist back then because it was so new, but yes.
The sky really is the limit for any listeners that we have that are thinking about getting into nursing, or maybe RNs who are trying to decide what their next step is. If a nurse practitioner route is the trajectory you see yourself going, you really do have a lot of options out there.
I love the varied different roads that you can go down, and you can become a specialist in any area.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the experience and how that shaped what your current role is now. Like, how did that lead you into private practice, working for yourself in mental health?
Well, the FNP role was a perfect mesh. I went into urgent care. We actually had an emergency room at the VA at that time, and it was the perfect mesh because a lot of people, I always said this, they come to the urgent care, the emergency room, they want somebody to help take care of them,
Sure.
and they don't want to go see psych even if they need it. So it was a perfect mesh for me. But throughout my career at the VA, I did primary care. They just kind of moved me around as they needed me, and I ended up on locked psychiatric ward
Okay.
for drug and alcohol abuse in the end. I thought I was going to stay there about 6 more years, but that's when I wrote the book on Girls Just Want to Have Funds, available on Amazon, that you already talked about.
So you wrote that while you were still actively working at the VA.
Yes.
Awesome. Look
And
at you.
so I wanted to do podcasts, and there was nobody to give me coverage at the VA. There was no coverage for me to use my leave. I had a lot of hours of leave. And so I made what was really a quick decision that if I wanted to do something with this book in a timely manner, I had to go. So luckily, I had made the 30-year mark, left the VA with a pension and able to take my medical insurance with me, which was a game changer. But they actually spurred me to do something that I wouldn't do just because I couldn't be on a couple of podcasts that I wanted. And it ended up being a blessing in disguise because after working for that long for the government, being your own business owner was something that I never would have experienced, and I love it.
You would definitely put in your dues there after 3 decades. I love that you were able to retire earlier than, the conventional retirement
Mm.
age. And that backup plan was already there, that you knew you wanted to do that. It was already a passion project that you ended up turning into your second career.
I wasn't really thinking too much. All I knew was that I needed to do something because I need to stay busy. And I thought my private practice would be medical and psychiatric, but what I found out was I wanted to do it 2 long days a week, and the psychiatric component kept me totally busy because there's no medicine prescribers for that. They're hard to find.
It is so hard to find,
They're hard to get
especially in
into.
our area. Like, we are such an underserved area for any mental health. Yeah.
And so you can't divorce yourself from the medical side. And if someone comes in and they are feeling very down or whatever, I always want to know lab, and I want to make sure you're not lacking in your vitamins or something else is going on before we talk about
Oh, yeah.
medications.
Nutritional deficiencies,
Mhm.
B12, vitamin D, all of the things. What's going on with the thyroid? That's directly related to symptoms of anxiety, depression. So I love
Okay.
that you're approaching it from like a whole person, holistic, rather than just clinical. Oh, you have anxiety and prescribing the medication, quick in and out 15-minute visit that you're maybe used to if you're just going in to see somebody in the traditional healthcare model. So, okay, you've worked in different roles throughout the years. You're now in private practice, and then you said you're also doing some financial counseling. So, what sparked the interest in starting Allen Money Talks and writing Girls Just Want to Have Funds? What led you to that particular passion project, and what experiences have you had that have really driven the financial counseling piece of your practice now?
This was a long time ago. I had worked hard, and my husband had worked hard that day, and we wanted to order out pizza. And it all started really from there because we looked at our measly checking account. There wasn't enough money in there to do it.
So I think a lot of our listeners have probably had similar experiences at some point in their life, those financial hardships. What changes did you make in your life that really turned your finances around for yourself, personally, for your family?
We cooked a frozen pizza that night, by the way, after we couldn't afford to order out. And then I started reading everything I could about money. And I read and I read and I came upon, at that time, Dave Ramsey. And then I ended up teaching his courses. And then when I wrote this book, I decided some of his stuff, there were so many steps.
Okay.
And so I thought, I've got to make this simple for younger versions of myself. I narrowed it down more to 4 steps that if you do these, just kitchen table talk is how I wrote my book, and examples of people that did it. If you can do these 4 steps, you're probably above 85 to 90% of the people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And there's ways to do it. And then to work on building your wealth. But a lot of it is understanding where your money is going. You can still let it go there, but you need to know where it's going.
Yeah, and if it's something that's actually that you're benefiting from.
Right.
I fall into the people that subscribe to so many different things that you don't really need or you don't use. I'll go in every so often now and review all my subscriptions in my cell phone to see what's coming out. I'm like, I haven't used that application for
Yeah.
6 months. Why am I paying for that? Turn that off. That's $14 that I'm paying each month. And while it could be insignificant, it could have gone towards anything else than to something that I'm not even touching. So walk us through those principles, those 4 things that people can do. And it's mostly targeted towards women, right?
Yes.
Anybody can use the principles, but your primary focus is women and making sure that they can become financially secure on their own.
I'll tell you why it's mainly for women, because you know that old adage that says, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy? It's so true. And the woman really is the pulse of the household, whether she's the one actually running the finances or not. Mom usually decides that, hey, we are going to go to Disney this year or we're going to take a camping trip. She's the one that decides we're going to remodel this room for one child or our living room. And that old adage, if mom can really get around her thinking, even when you're cutting back, no matter what age your children are, if you're doing the cutting back to really skim and find out where the money's going, if mom has a good attitude, it makes it so much better, even if you don't feel it. If you can fake it so that you're not like, no, we can't order pizza. I told you we're trying to get these finances in order. Instead, say, on Friday nights now, we're going to make our own pizzas and everybody can put on their individual pizza what they like best.
Yeah, you end up spending it to make it creative, so you're not losing out on the experience of having pizza, but you're also saving a few dollars.
Right.
So,
And
definitely.
reusing leftovers and that type of stuff. So there's so many things you can do just with an attitude change. And just like when you talked about remembering your dad being off of work, many of us have money memories that may not even be at our conscience. And that's why they come into counseling and their insurance will pay for them to see me, and we'll diagnose it as adjustment disorder and financial stress, and we will try to get to the bottom of some of those thoughts so you can stop doing what you want to stop doing and start doing what you want stop doing what you're doing if you want to.
That's amazing to me. The fact that you are still able to, and of course, you said that there are diagnosis codes out there. You are able to diagnose them with an adjustment disorder that's related to finances. And then you can use that time during counseling to help them work through their money troubles because that's directly impacting their mental health. And do you help them create budgets? Like, what's
Yeah.
that counseling process like?
It can be anything that they need, and everything's different. But basically, when a budget is a cuss word in Indiana where I live, but because people think, oh no, I'm not going to be able to buy any more shoes, or I wanted new curtains. We've got this trip to Disney planned, but a budget really isn't a cuss word. A budget is just knowing where it's going somewhere. So it's giving a name to those dollars that you have coming in your house. And when you know that, you can decide if you want to make changes. Are you spending $1,000 a month eating out and you're putting $100 in your retirement? Or worse, none? If you know it, you don't have to change. I'm not going to make them change. If they know where it's going, then they can decide that's not what I want. I'm eating my retirement.
So you're helping them identify those patterns. What kind of typical money beliefs or patterns are you seeing most in your practice?
I think with the younger generations, it's YOLO, only live once,
Can't take it with you.
and FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Those are two of the biggest ones because they think, you know what, there's probably going to be a war breakout anyway, and why am I trying to save a ton of money at this? But trust me, you're going to get to retirement one day and you're going to be so glad you did it.
I have caught myself in that particular situation a few times. Like, I'm not going to be able to take it with me. What if I drop dead at 40? Yeah, I want this. I'm going to invest in it. I think there has to be a balance. Like, you shouldn't live so frugally that you don't enjoy your life because life is more than just waking up, eating, working, sleeping, and rinse and repeat. Like, you do have to have some balance. But that financial stress does directly impact everything else. So what are you seeing as far as like financial stress and the use of financial counseling? How is it benefiting your patients mentally and physically in your practice?
I think it's benefiting them because they have some hope. When we put the budget down and we take a look at it and make small changes. And another thing is they think it's at first going to have to be forever, and it's not. If they buckle down for a while and just figure out what's going on, and both people know what's going on, although usually one person's more invested in the relationship and getting things in order because it happens to be like their gift and they're stressed. But if the other person will at least go along with it, it works out. There can be somebody that's not really into it, but he will go along with the budget. That's how my husband was with me when we first started out. I was all about it. I had change. This was not going we're not going to live like this. And he went along with it. And really, when you buckle down for sometimes even just a year to 18 months and you get it figured out, then you take off this noose around your neck. It's invisible and it's what makes you feel like you're going to break down crying every time another bill comes in the mail. You've just got it there and you could cry with nothing, let alone something, but anything can make you cry. And we give them peace with a capital P. That's what I say. And when they have that and you have hope, it makes everything better. Your anxiety, your depression, your mood, your marriage. Yeah.
So I know that you used to work upon like the Dave Ramsey principles and philosophies. You said you've adjusted it to make it simpler. That those particular principles, are they still in alignment with Dave Ramsey? How have you specifically made it more simple? Like what kind of tools and tricks are you using to help make understanding and implementing a budget easier for your clientele?
One thing that I always tell people that counsel with me, I don't care if you use mine, but you can read different ones all the time. I believe they probably all would work. So pick one and
Okay.
let's get started.
So don't go back and forth. Choose which
Yeah.
technique and strategies are going to be in alignment with your goals, and
Right.
then stick with it.
Some of the things that are a little unrealistic, this was just from my standpoint, were never having a car payment and never having a credit card. I did a lot of business travel with the VA, and I have used a credit card. I try to pay it off every month. And most months I pay it off, no matter what I need to put on it. But I feel like this is just me. I feel like if a credit card gets hacked, and people spend all day long every day trying to hack
Hmm.
everything, it's to me safer than a debit card because I've known people that did get their debit cards hacked and they ended up getting the money back, but it affected their money and their bills for a little bit.
Use like PayPal or Apple Pay, or if I absolutely have to tap or swipe at the point of sale, I try to use a credit card for that exact same reason because it's happened to me personally. I've had to fight with the bank to try to get personal funds and business funds back into my checking account. And that's a struggle, especially if you're working on a budget on a tight, paycheck to paycheck
Right.
budget. That's really difficult to absorb that unforeseen expense. And you're not always going to be on the upside of things. It could be something that you're waiting weeks to get that money back. And again, if you're living on a tight budget, that's the difference between being able to pay a bill, keep the lights on, feed your family. So for sure, I would agree that there is some safety there. Where do you think people go wrong as far as, they get that credit card, they're not paying it off? Like, where do they go wrong and how can they get back on track to avoid that debt snowballing in the wrong direction?
I call it debt locomotive. And what we do is we put all the debts down. And if you remember the debt locomotive story, like the little engine that could,
Okay.
one of my favorite stories that I read to my kids all the time and now to my grandkids. It is. I love the story. And when I went back and when I was writing the book and I reevaluated, this was a female engine going up the hill that it eventually took the toys over the hill to all the little girls and boys. And what we would do when my kids were little, if they were in a sport or somebody was picking on them, I'd say, remember, I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. You can do this. And I use that same thing with my grandkids, but the deal of it is that you have to know that you can do it and put it into effort, and that's how it gets done. So you write down all those debts, and you can do it one of two ways. Start with the high interest, but sometimes the high interest, like if there's a say most of these stores are going out of business now, but if there's a J.C. Penney card
Mm-hmm.
or if there's a Citibank card and you go with a high interest, maybe that one has 3,000 on it, but you've got this one going to Sears or Amazon that has 354 on it. I like to go by the smallest debt because then people see momentum and like the debt locomotive, then I know I know I can. Just like getting one paid off and then taking that minimum payment, you have to make minimum payments on all of them.
Sure.
That extra payment on the next debt and paying those off gives you that momentum, which I think makes you go faster.
How do you help get people back on track? What are your strategies?
First of all, you've got to call your creditors. Don't just keep
Okay.
throwing things away without opening it.
That's probably easy to, oh, that's a bill, not opening
I
it.
know they're just adding all these fees.
Mhm.
So what you can do is call them and tell them that you're working with somebody. And the people that work with me, we say, I'm working with sometimes I give them a letter. They'll at least usually stop the interest and continued late fees, and they'll freeze the amount. You can't use a card anymore, but they'll freeze the amount owed on that card until you can get in some sort of payment method with them. And some people then consolidate them. And if you can catch this before it's too far gone, sometimes you can get a 0% uh, credit card for 12 months if your credit's not damaged yet. And you can roll a lot of that in that, and then you'll have 12 months to figure something out while you're making big payments to all of them on one card. I usually say this: last resort would be to take out of your retirement at your work or something, because sometimes you can take loans there,
Sure.
but sometimes we have to do that because there's just no other way around it.
So truly, if there is not an alternative, if you have damaged your credit beyond repair, or if your debt to income ratio is so high that you don't qualify for additional financing, like that's a last resort, borrowing from your
It wouldn't be a
401k
last
or
resort. You have to get to the root cause of what got you into this situation where you're drowning in debt. If it's sometimes medical bills, and that's beyond your control, but other times it's things that are very much in your control. And when you get them controlled, then it's not going to happen again before you would ever touch your 401k.
there's not going to be a quick fix. You're going to have to put in the work to address it. You are addressing mental health, giving medications where needed. Do you provide any additional counseling? Do you collaborate with other providers? Like, what's a full care plan look like from your side of things?
If they need other more intensive counseling, like say weekly counseling, the office that I'm in, there's other people up there that have their own businesses, and I refer them to who I think might be a good match.
Perfect. So your medication management, financial planning and strategy, but for weekly counseling, maybe referring to a licensed clinical social worker or
Right.
therapist for that, because that talk therapy isn't your specific specialty. Okay.
When I started, before I realized how full I might be getting and how many people needed the medic management so badly, either were diagnosed wrong a long time ago and they've been on the wrong medicine all this time, or they come in and they say, don't take away my Zoloft, don't take away my Lexapro. You should have seen me without it, but I'm not good. I'm just, going through the motions. And there's a lot of medication tricks and add-ons and different things that you can do to make yourself where you feel like this is as good as it gets. It gets better.
They're just like, this is my baseline. Like you said, it won't get better. I just need this to get through the day to day. And you are trying to address the root cause. I'm like, how did you get here to begin with? And what can we do to improve your life? You don't have to
Right.
be stuck here. We can create these goals and work these strategies to help you improve your quality of life. I love that, because it is so easy, I think, from the healthcare side of things, or even looking directly at mental health, to just go in to see your psychiatrist for a 5-10 minute visit, get the medication, and walk out the door. And that's that, not actually addressing the root cause. You end up on a couple different antidepressants and anxiolytics, something for PRN breakthrough anxiety, but nobody's addressing the root cause of why that anxiety, that depression
Right.
exists to begin with, and what we can do to make it better.
And we aren't paying attention to our thoughts, because it all goes back to this. Our thoughts make up our life. We can have two people with the exact same story, maybe single moms that live in this housing complex, and we don't really understand why one sees the glass half full and one sees the glass half empty. But you can become aware of your thoughts, because whatever you're thinking makes up your life. And
100%.
when people realize that if you pay attention to your thoughts, and the exercises I give them it might just be short reels off YouTube or clips or videos that I want them to watch, but I want them to interact. And if they don't do that, I discharge them, because again, medicine's 25% of it, but doing the work and finding out the root cause of why do I think this way? Okay, how do I change it? Is really what's going to make their life way up there.
So
much better.
they have to be willing to have an open mind, to be willing to shifting their mindset, shifting their expectations. And that's really easy to get stuck in that cycle of negativity. Like you said, mindset is definitely part of it. Positive affirmations, how that is going to impact your day-to-day expectations, and it's going to have a ripple effect on every aspect of your life. And it's just really so important. It's not healthy to stay stuck in that negativity. That negativity is going to bleed into everything.
One thing, positive affirmations, and I totally believe in it,
Mhm.
but the real rubber meets the road when the negative thought pops into your head. You can't control it. It comes in there and what you do with it then. So I do believe you. Some people say if you were in my situation, you couldn't even think positive, but we can trick our mind, especially when we wake up and when we go to bed, when we're drifting, we fall into this theta state, and you can affect your mind and then consciously say, when a bad thought comes into my mind, like I'm never going to make it, that I say, uh-oh, that just because I had that thought doesn't make it the truth. I had a thought. It doesn't make it true. And then what you do with it after can really change your life.
If you're going to dwell on it, or if you're going to say, no, like you said, it's not the truth. Just because I had that thought, it isn't true. And then you reverse that with something positive. Yeah, it's January, new year, new me, New Year's resolutions. Let's talk about setting goals for the year. What types of goals do you think people should be addressing? Where do you think people go wrong with their goal setting and their intentions?
I think goal setting's great, but if you listen to anybody talk, they will say by the third week of January, the second week of February, most New Year's resolutions are by the wayside, and then you feel like a failure because you said, this was the year I'm going to do that. So I'm not big on New Year's resolutions, but what I always tell people is you do need to set goals, and it doesn't matter what time of the year. So if you said January 1st you were going to stop smoking, or you said January 1st I'm going to start at the gym 3 times a week, make it realistic. And I always say make it small, like something you can do. One thing, it might be that I add two 8-ounce glasses of water every morning. Something that you can do. I have this great video that I send almost everyone, and even though it'll say after age 50, I send it to my 20-year-old clients. It's Dr. Andrew Huberman. It's a little reel that says 6 golden habits to do after age 50 for longevity. And these things are so simple. I'll always say, when you come back the next time, it's, I want to know how many you've been able to easily incorporate into your life. Because if you're doing things for longevity to live longer, it's usually definitely helping your mood and making you feel better. And it's things like getting a sunlight in your eyes, even if it's cloudy, as early in the day as possible, 5 to 10 minutes, even if it's through a window if you have to. Breathing in fresh air, small bursts of exercise, socialization. It's these things that you can do, and it's not going to be like, I need you to exercise for an hour and a half every day.
Yeah.
Because it's not doable.
No, especially to set that as a resolution, because after day 2 or 3 of not hitting the goal, you're just, I quit, and then you're reverting right back to that previous behavior, and there's been absolutely no change. So there has to be a little bit of realism balance with your ambitions and your goal setting. So do you create a written plan for your clientele to follow? Like, do you incorporate setting New Year's goals at all in January when patients are coming to you?
Set goals every year, and here's
Okay.
how I do it. I say this, 2 things which will really help you with your goals. One is, I say, if you never see me again after today, this is usually on the first time that they visit, but 3 things magically happened to you when you woke up tomorrow morning, and it made your life super better. It's not like give me $1 million, but it can be money. What would they be? And a lot of times then they tell me where we're headed, and they want to socialize more without feeling anxious. They want to lose weight, but they're overwhelmed with stress, or they want to stop being as angry with their children over little things. Something like that. They go, if that could be, my life would be better. And that's what we start working on. There's an old motivational speaker, and I say that he's older. His name's Brian Tracy. And he says this: write down 10 things that would be life-changing on a sheet of paper, and that will really change your life. And you'd think, these would be goals for me this year. Then look down them and say, which one of these, if it happened, would it impact my life the most? Say it's number 3. Turn the paper over, write down number 3 and write it. And then start saying, what would the steps be to get this goal accomplished, and start writing them down. You might need 2 sheets of paper for every week for sure, but every day try to do something on that list, because usually when we have goals, we're happier when we're working on them rather than we finally attain them. And so that gives you hope and momentum, and you see things being marked off your list and you're like, I can do that. It gives you confidence, and it's really awesome for your life.
It's going to set you up for success rather than setting the bar way too high above what you're going to reasonably be expected to accomplish in a week or a month. You fail and then you just quit. You throw in the towel because you don't feel like it's worth your investment of time anymore. Is there any difference for you, like pen to paper versus putting it in like a task on your Apple Notes or anything like that? Do you see any benefit versus actually journaling it out versus using technology?
I like to see it myself, but some people will say, I have to do it on my phone. I have to see it. And sometimes what we'll do is, for people that are more phone oriented with everything, a lot of people do better, I think, when they write it out and can mark it. But we will put their 10 goals or some steps and they'll use it on their page. So even if they're not looking at their phone, it's in their peripheral vision. And another thing that we'll do is put the screensaver on as, for me, it's beach. And I have everything that's beachy. So even in my peripheral vision, when I'm in my office, there's beautiful pictures of beaches all around in my peripheral vision. Even if I'm super busy and I'm not thinking what's in my peripheral vision, it's a mood booster.
Okay. So you don't need to touch grass, you need to touch sand. That's what I'm getting for you.
Yes.
That's how you
That's
do
how
your
I
grounding
ground. Yeah.
exercises. I love that. I love that. If there's one thing that a listener could take away from our discussion, about mindset, any shifts around money or wellness, what would you want that to be?
Key takeaways can be so different for everyone, but since we're talking about money and money management, I would say this: get your bills in order this year. So if you want to do something aesthetic wise, whether that be get on a GLP-1, talk to somebody just about health and nutrition, get something done with your face, even a facial, make that part of $50 a month is going to be going into that account for me. I can take my lunch leftovers to work. I don't need to eat out. I go to that category a lot just to see what people are spending there. But if you will just say, I'm going to do this for myself, again, it goes back to, this is important to me. I'm doing something for myself. It's called self-care, and your life is going to be better because of it.
Self-care looks different for everyone, and I would never want somebody to have to choose between paying their bills and getting a facial or getting their quarterly Botox. But on the other hand, I've seen the direct impact personally and secondhand with my patients on what that mood boost does for them, what it does for their mental health to feel more confident in their appearance. So if they want that facial, if that 45-minute to an hour reset is something that helps them, then maybe they're coming in quarterly for that, and they're cutting out something else like the $10 Starbucks that they're getting every day on the way to work. So they're just shifting that money from something that doesn't bring them any positive development in their life, and they're shifting it into something that will actually boost their mood or boost their mental health. Is there anything that you want to see more people do differently after hearing this particular conversation regarding finances and their mental health?
I would say that's a great question, but the biggest thing is to know where your money is going. And I hope your thoughts around money have a lot to do with your mental health, have a lot to do with how good your relationships are, how much stress you hold, and just living a good life. There's cheaper ways to live a very good life, and there's ways that you can live a very good life and get what you want if you have control and know where your money's going.
So take back the control, figure out where your money's going, create a budget based on whatever principle or philosophy that you need to use. You have Girls Just Want to Have Funds. That is a book that you've written. Where is it available?
Amazon, I don't know if it's digital or not, but
Okay.
it probably is.
Okay, gotcha. So they can definitely order it on Amazon, and then it is going to have budgeting principles and strategies specifically targeted towards females, but anybody could use these principles. And then if they need you for mental health or financial counseling, your brick and mortar location is here in Danville, Allen Mind, Body and Spirit Health, but you also see virtual clientele both Illinois and Indiana. So as long as they live or reside within either of those states, you could potentially take them on as a client. And then you also have Alan Money Talks over on YouTube. You have lots of tips and tricks over there as well. So if somebody isn't prepared to sit down and read a book from start to finish and they just need bite-size videos for their attention span, then that might be something that they could benefit from too. Yes. Excellent. All right. Well, any other closing remarks before we wrap up today, Monica?
I don't think so, but thank you so much for having me.
If this conversation resonated with you, make sure you share it with somebody who might benefit from it. Remember, you can follow me at BobbiTheNP_LuxLift on Instagram or TikTok, or find us at the Aesthetically Awkward Podcast on Instagram. We also have a Facebook page, and be sure to tune in next week for our next conversation. Have a good one.